Greetings, Internet. Welcome to episode number 315 of the Comic Watcher Show. We're still here. We're still making up silly things to talk to y'all about. And, well, we don't make them up. They just happen to us. But
We talk to the
anyway,
people who make them up.
yes. Thank you, Chad, for that clarifying statement. So tonight we are talking to author Jude Ellison S. Doyle about their upcoming Clayface comic from DC and other awesome things they've written. So Jude, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Clayface, got a movie coming up, got a comic book that's not necessarily like a tie-in or anything like that, but a little synergistic in its way. How on earth did you get tapped for Clayface?
I had done a little bit of work on the DC Pride comic, and it was just like one little short story, and then they had a bridging narrative with Trans Man, and I was one of the writers on that. And apparently they liked what I was doing because I heard that Clayface was one of the characters they were thinking of bringing back they're doing, limited series around Batman villains. They just did one for Two-Face. It was really cool. And I did not think that I was going to get it, frankly. I didn't think it was a big enough deal to get it. But I got really obsessed with Clayface very quickly, and I think that helped me. Where I came to them with 3 different pitches, and I'm like, okay, now I know there are 8 different guys. I've got, so yeah, I just basically I very, very quickly became a super fan of this one sort of subspecies of being that intermittently fights Batman, and
fights Batman, helps Batman,
yeah, kind of. He goes back and forth. He has good days and bad, so which is what's great about it. That's why I love the character,
Yeah, I love Clayface too, and I think the first Clayface story I remember is reading the Mud Pack from
Yes.
Detective Comics.
Fantastic.
So. But speaking of that, what was your first introduction into comics, and what made you want to write them?
Well, I have been writing since 2021, but I don't think that's what you just asked. You're asking about little weird Jude getting into comics as an 11. Yeah. That for me it was a mix of things. I loved a lot of web comics in the early 2000s. A lot of us did. But for me, it was basically the same thing as every other queer kid where I just got super, super into X-Men for a while and was dissociating into, and I got really unlucky because my X-Men was Generation X. So, it kind of had a famously terrible run, and then they killed off all the characters right away. And that was my introduction to comics. But yeah, I love that. And I also, Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman was a formative figure for me as a young man. I was like, this is good. I want more of this. They did not yet have a lot of Michelle Pfeiffer spirit in the comics, but I read Catwoman.
Okay.
So coming back around, I was just going to say, to continue that, how did you wind up breaking into comics?
It was Chris Rosa at Boom Studios, had read some of my nonfiction work and knew that I had a newsletter about horror movies, and they were looking to find horror comics. And he just wrote me and said, well, it seems like you understand character and you understand narrative arc pretty well. Have you ever tried this? And I was like, yeah, I've obviously written a ton of comic scripts and put them in my drawer because it's a forbidden dream, but I'm going to play it cool and pretend that this is, that I can be normal about this. So yeah, I wound up pitching Boom, and my first series came out 2021, I think, was Ma with Al Kaplan, who I'm sure his work is astonishing. And I lucked out on that. That I got to ride Al Kaplan's coattails.
And now you're writing for DC. 5 years
Well,
later.
I mean, I have written for DC. We'll see how this goes. We'll see if they want me.
Will they want you back?
Yeah.
They seem to like.
Yeah, they've been amazing to work with. I'll tell you that. Like, I was really super scared because I've done a lot of like I worked with Oni, I've worked with Boom, I've done small press comics that were creator owned and where like I always had a lot of control, and even though the sales are okay, there's not like an expectation for me to sell 1 million copies. And I did not know what it was going to be like writing for a big 2 title. I was like, am I gonna just like completely burn out, or am I going to be able to write the way I write? And like Clayface came together really fast with a really supportive edit, and I was able to write exactly the comic I wanted, which was amazing because the comic I wanted to write was super weird.
Clayface is the character for that because he's so versatile and could be pretty much anyone.
That's the thing, is that like he could be anyone and anyone can be him. Like they just keep making new Clayfaces. And that was really like what was delightful to me about the story, is that like, yes, it is about the main Clayface in comics has mostly been Basil Karlo. But like, I think that if you're writing a Clayface mystery and you're not going to be able to do what the movie does, which is, from what I understand, an origin story, like, and it's a great origin story. Everybody wants to tell the story of a man who wakes up and finds out his face is falling off. That's astonishing. I love that. But, if you're writing a comic, you can do the opposite of that, which is to write a culmination story and to see just like with the Mud Pack, just see how many Clayfaces and how many allusions to different Clayface storylines you can get in one. I really love the idea that like Clayface as a condition just seems to keep spreading and there is no stopping it. Like there's just like a major subset of, they're almost like, I don't know, it's like a new subculture. It's like they're goths or they're furries. There are also just Clayfaces in the DC universe. Like there's just more and more Clayfaces every day.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, I think Clayface is an interesting character because John Jackson Miller used him in his Batman Returns, not Returns. His novelization that continued the 1989 movie series, and he also appeared in the sequel to that, and that was an interesting use to him. And he appeared in the animated series, and that was another take on the character that really worked.
Yeah, no, I feel like the animated series is like, everybody's going to tell you to start there when you are talking about Clayface. And like, I can absolutely see why. Like they really, it was heavily based on the life of Montgomery Clift. And when you look at our Clayface, this is Fran Galan. I was like, well, I have a lot of ideas about how I could look. And Fran was like, no, he looks like Montgomery Clift because that's who he's based on. That this was an actor who was, one of the great method actors of his time. He was up there, but he got into a car crash and had, very bad facial injuries. They were able to reconstruct it, but he had chronic pain and he just sort of fell apart. He developed a really, really bad drug habit to manage the pain. And it was called, the longest suicide in Hollywood history. And you don't think when you're sitting down to watch like a children's animated series that you're going to be like watching a drama about painkiller addiction and somebody who's very talented and has everything to live for, like watching his self being stripped away from him. And yet that's absolutely like there. And that's kind of the core of the character. That's the basic part of how I understand Basil, is that he is an addict, and he's an addict for reasons that he did not necessarily choose. He didn't have any control over this. Something was taken from him, and in order to feel whole again, he started trying to fix the problem, and trying to fix the problem became its own problem, which is like the same situation that like tons of people find themselves in every day, That's so, to be able to like build the character around that understanding that like this is a guy who had everything going for him and who fucked up his life in a huge public way beyond repair, and he didn't necessarily get to choose, you know, he didn't choose to be sick. He chose to like kill a bunch of people once he got sick.
Yes.
You know, he chose a lot of what I would say are like unhelpful coping strategies, like kidnapping the citizens of Gotham and forcing them to watch his one-man show. I think at one point one of his like, you know, there's like definitely like a BoJack Horseman quality to Clayface, where like as bad as this is, you found a way to make it worse. But yeah, I think that like there's just such a core of tragedy to the guy that he literally like, this is what comics are great for, is like the big physical metaphor that like he literally can't keep himself together. He keeps falling apart into a big monster every time he, you know, stops concentrating on how to look like a person.
And not to, you know, give anything away about the first issue, but I like how you kind of play with the, you know, you recognize his history, that there's other, you know, Clayfaces out there, and that, you know, how they have him how they have this Clayface contained in Arkham as a way of, you know, preventing him and from escaping, which, you know.
Yeah,
as well.
I feel so bad for the guys who work at Arkham. Like, really, just like literally, you just like sitting there drinking your coffee, and it's like, oh, somebody's escaped again, and yeah. It's a really crappy job, and it's crappy for them in this issue too. It's, you know, oh well.
And that was a nice comedic beat that you put in, where he's, again, not to give anything away, but he's, you know, there's a nice, when he's escaping, that, you know, the interaction between the two guards, that was a nice kind of, you know, nice catch, you know.
No, well, Fran drew one of them looking so surprised, and it was just like, we have to have him saying something. You can't just be throwing his coffee. So he's just like, oh no, it's not the alligator guy, is it? Yeah, like.
You know, one thing that really caught my attention in the first issue was the horror aspects of it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your own background as a horror writer or journalist. And I wonder, is that an approach that DC was initially receptive to with this character? Did they give you free reign to sort of set the tone yourself?
Yeah, they absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons they considered me for it, is that they knew they wanted somebody who had experience with horror. And all my previous comics have been that, you know, that the character is, and I don't have like literally any knowledge about the movie that's coming out except for what everybody's seen online, which looks really cool, you know, and I love Mike Flanagan a lot, but my understanding is that like this has always been a character who's just like, fundamentally he's creepy and he's uncomfortable to look at, and they want you to be able to get into that. Plus, I mean, you're writing in a Batman universe and you're writing from the perspective of a villain. Like, I think that the Two-Face series had, you know, for all its courtroom drama, had a solid grounding in horror too. Batman's always been the gothist superhero. Like, you want somebody who's gonna be like digging really deep into horror. I feel like for Clayface, you can do so much that's just like classic 80s body horror, where it's just like, I want goop, I want gunk, I want mucus, I just want everything to be really wet, you know, like, so, yeah.
So, again, not to give anything, will we be seeing Batman showing up, or is it more Clayface centric?
I think that like the little bit of him that we see in the beginning, where it's literally just like stock footage, is like, I'm sorry to tell you, that's the most Batman you get.
Good.
Because Clayface has worked with Batman before in that amazing, astonishing Tynan run. Like they were bros for a while, and then he like killed 9 people in a spree, and Batman kind of had to put an end to the friendship there. But I think that if you have, he's so used to, he has almost like a childlike faith that Batman can fix everything. That like I think it is. Because he's, if I had a guy who literally just showed up and beat me up every time I attempted to do something wrong, I would think he was super competent too. I would believe he could fix everything too. I wouldn't want to believe that too much. But I think putting him in a situation where he's out of Gotham for most of the series run, I'll give you that for free, and putting him in a situation where like what's happening is such a widespread institutional soft decay that like it's almost like you can't have one guy run in and fix it, that kind of forces him to take responsibility for his own problems and cleaning up his own mess. Although I do think he still finds ways to like run and make other people.
Sure, of course. As one does.
Yeah.
So what were some of your horror influences that informed Clayface? You mentioned body horror earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously like, I think everybody in the world probably names these 2 guys, but David Lynch and David Cronenberg are both huge for me. Cronenberg, particularly with this one, there's like a little joke about like the Seth Brundle Memorial Wellness Center in issue 1, which is Seth Brundle is the name of Jeff Goldblum's character in The Fly. But like The Fly is definitely like, you want some of that for a Clayface story, and there's more than a little of that in here. I was also getting really into just sort of goopy like Society, the Brian Yuzna movie, which is like not a good movie, but the final 20 minutes of it are the most disgusting thing you've ever seen in your life. Where like I feel bad asking people to watch it because like I have a strong stomach, and that did it for me. That was a lot. But yeah, sort of, so I love that, and From Beyond, the Jeffrey Combs movie, and sort of just the really 80s tradition, The Blob.
Yes.
I wanted to like, I've done some really Lovecraftian horror. I've done like Southern Gothic horror. Mom, my first comic, had some body horror, but was just like one element of a larger thing. With this, I actually was just like, and I mean, we had to go back and forth with standards and practices a lot because it's 13 plus. Like, like I wasn't sure how much I was going to be allowed to show, but what I figured out was that like they sent me this note that's like, well, as long as it's not organs, as long as it's just goo, we can do it. And I'm like, I have so many things we can do.
Works.
Yeah, like I kind of wanted a level of viscosity and visceral splatter. So yeah, that was something I was thinking about. I was thinking to bring it into a superhero context. You almost can't slow it down as much as you would for a standard horror thing. There has to be a certain level of plot and, keep it moving forward. But yeah, that I wanted to do something that had that intensity to it.
So since the plot seems to be, and the tagline is celebrity dirt, I'm assuming it's going to take place, a lot of it in Hollywood. Did you have to get into like, the movie, how the movie business works, and I don't know if that's clear, the question I'm trying to formulate.
Well, I think like there's a bit of movie making in this, which like I hate to tell you this pro at that, but but what it's really, I think, about is the process of building a reputation and what can hide behind a celebrity reputation. Not to spoil it, but there are, when we begin the series, 2 Basil Carlos. There's one who is fabulously successful and everybody loves him and he's gotten clean and mounted a comeback and he's on the star of the stage. And there's our Basil Carlo who just scraped himself out of a sewer, after breaking loose from Arkham for like the 20th time, and who's completely out of control of his life. And we've seen Basil lose his career a lot. That's been in a few of the adaptations. We've seen him on the outs talking about what a great actor he once was. But I think the idea of like, what if a really famous person was a monster is one that we're not that unfamiliar with.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of more shocking that Basil hasn't just gotten his career back already, considering what some people get away with. So Celebrity Dirt is, without going too far into details, it is about public image and what that really pretty Hollywood surface can hide and how easy it is to hide things behind it.
Well, I must say that the first scene in the book, which again, no spoilers, but the first scene in the book really takes that to heart in a very literal way, what's below the surface. And it's very effective.
Yes.
Like horror and comedy, to me, are very difficult to pull off in comics because they rely so much on timing.
Exactly.
And in the case of horror, you also have to have the atmosphere and the mood. And if you don't have the right artist that can properly convey those things, then your horror is probably going to fall a bit thin.
Yes.
But, you seem to have really lucked out with Fran Galan. What was it like working with them?
Fran is a genius. And I was not really, again, going into this as my first Big Two comic, I was really nervous about it. I knew I had written a script that had some pretty wild tonal swings in there and that had some images that were going to be difficult to impossible to convey in words, in a script. Fran's work is so glossy and beautiful. He has so many just nighttime shots of LA that knock me out. It's gorgeous. And then when you want him to tilt and pivot toward a darker tone or towards something that's outright disgusting, he dives in.
Turns it on. I caught that. Very much
He's
so.
been really I think his layouts on this, are gonna wow people. I've seen him he did the Dune House Harkonnen comic, and it's an adaptation and it's a beautiful comic, but because it was an adaptation, it was so tight. This one, he has more room in the script, and the choices he makes with paneling and with visuals, just it elevates it so much. He was talking in our early conversations about well, I want it to be a little bit more like a movie. I want to have pans and zooms, and I was like, I don't know how that's going to work. And he absolutely made it work. So yeah. It's
fair to say that you don't write a super tight script in terms of stage direction.
I write panel by panel just because that's how I'm used to doing it. I typically, I haven't yet had a project where the artist was signed before the script was done. Typically, when I write a limited series, I will just, go into my room for a month and I'll write it front to back. So I have to just, block everything out for myself.
Right.
I think that that's ultimately not, it's not going to work for me to tell an artist how to be the artist. Right? It's, if I am stepping on the artist's ideas and their creativity and insisting they do everything exactly the way I envisioned it, then I'm not leaving room for them to get passionate about the project and bring their best ideas.
Right on.
No.
What was, when you were writing Clayface, what was, one of, I guess, the most difficult concept about the character to grasp, or maybe, also the easiest? I know you've kind of said that he's, kind of can be everybody and such a, he could be a glob.
I mean, I think that basic question of how do I control how people see me, or having something about yourself that you are intensely self-conscious about, that you hate, that you want to hide. Often something physical. Like for me, as a queer person, as a trans person, the idea of like being really uncomfortable with your body and being hyper conscious of how you're presented and wanting to like fix it so that people aren't staring at you. That's an intimate thing. And it's, for me, you know, that's the core of the character, is that like he is trying so hard to hold himself together into a shape he can like. And that's kind of everybody. That's, I think we kind of see as the series progresses, that's more and more and more people. Everybody is trying to whip themselves into a form that they can live with, or live with him, or let other people see them in. But to do that in a way that's not just, oh, I'm a monster over and over, is, it can be, you know, you don't want it to be one note, right? Like he's kind of been out of the closet as a goo monster for a good long time now. He's lived like this for a while. And I wanted to show both the fact that his powers are in a way like really tragic for him, and also that like this is who he is now. He's pretty comfortable with himself. And in some ways that's the best case scenario for a goo monster, that there are a lot of people who would be worse at being Clayface than he is. You know, so trying to find the right balance of, yes, this guy is a major fuck up. He's done terrible things. He has ruined his own life. He has ended human lives. He has ruined the lives of countless others just by them being near him. And also, he is fundamentally, I think, I don't even want to say good, but I think he is driven by the desire to be better than he is. You know? To get him so that he is both a villain and kind of an amoral person in a lot of ways, and also not so horrible that you can't root for him, is what I wanted, you know. And I love writing villains, because you can kind of just like, you don't have to solve a problem in a way that's nice or admirable. You can just find the direct way to solve the problem, you know.
So setting aside for the fact that Clayface doesn't always make very nice decisions and can be a monster and is sometimes a literal monster.
Yes.
Is there room at all in Clayface for an analogy for the trans experience?
Well, I mean, I think everybody has put parts of themselves in Clayface, right? Like Grant Morrison obviously has written Clayface, and in, you know, in Serious House on Serious Earth, Clayface is really specifically meant to be a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic, because they worked with Preston Payne, who's the Clayface that like can't shapeshift at all and just melts people whenever he touches them, you know? So that craving for contact, even though it will destroy you and the other person, is like, that was the metaphor there. There are, you know, also just versions of Clayface that are straightforwardly very heterosexual and very horrible to women. I think, you know, the Alan Moore Preston Payne story is completely different, because it's just about like Preston Payne being an incel who's having an abusive relationship with a mannequin. And that's also a perfectly valid way to read the character. I think that, you know, being trans, I read things into the Clayface condition of being like malleable and also being like uncomfortable with the form you've been given. That helped me connect with the character. I don't think you can write any character unless you emotionally connect with it. It helps that like his best friend is a trans woman. Like I was obviously like, the second I learned that Dr. Victoria October existed, I was like, she needs to be there. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care where she is. Get her on a plane, put her in the series.
Nice.
But it, I would hope, is something that just about anybody can connect with, you know? Like, I don't think anybody in this world, you know, whether they're like a clavicular looks maxer who's like taking meth and hitting their face with a hammer to be beautiful, or, you know, somebody like some athlete who's juicing to be stronger than they are, or somebody who has problems with food and is, you know, terrified, is like slipping into disordered eating because they're, you know, in an abusive relationship with their own body. Like, there are so many ways people go to war with their own physical form and end up harming themselves. And that's, again, not to, I don't want to like spoil everything. And I think what I'm telling you is something that you're going to see more of in issue 2 than issue 1. But one thing we are going to see is that like Clayfacification is becoming kind of an increasingly big business. You know, that there are now, if there are 2 shapeshifters and they're both claiming to be Basil Carlo, obviously one of them is a Clayface, but that's a long list of suspects that is getting longer by the minute. Like, right. I did want to, just as someone who's very comfortable with like digging into my own psyche and being uncomfortable, because I think you have to be for horror, I did want to like just talk about like, if there were a drug that could let you just change your body, even if it had a slight chance of making you a goo monster for the rest of your life, I don't think it makes sense, for example, in Batman the Animated Series, that like Basil's the only one who gets super addicted to Renew. I think there would be like tons of people on it. So that was one thing I wanted to play with. I wanted to like wide scale Clayface the population.
So, you know, as a coming from a journalist background and someone who's written other works, nonfiction and stuff, how did that help? Did that help you, with your comic book writing? And is there anything from comic book writing that you've taken to, that other part of your writing?
Yeah, I absolutely, reporting and interviewing people was bizarrely helpful for me, because I am I don't know if you can tell by all these like huge long answers I'm giving, but I like to talk. I like to make a speech. And getting the rhythms of like how people talk to each other and learning to like present dialogue within a piece so that it sounded like a person talking and not, getting past like when you're talking to a professional, especially in a political context, like they're going to have talking points and they're going to have a very massaged way of putting themselves forward. And you want to just sort of like get them a little bit comfortable and catch them off guard and get them in a moment where they just are using their own voices and they sound like human beings. So I think reporting gave me an ear for dialogue. Bizarrely, the thing that has helped me the most in writing comic scripts is poetry. I was a poetry major, which is like, I really, I'm not unfamiliar with really bad life decisions. And that was one of the big ones. But, but like
some slack.
So structured that it really does help if you've written like a sestina or a sonnet, where it's just like you understand like there are going to be this many pages, there are going to be this many panels. You need to like respect the rhythm of the thing, and when you respect the rhythm and you respect the form, it almost writes itself for you. You don't have to be clever, you have to let the form do the talking.
I get it. Application across many media. It's all literature. It all ties together.
One of the, kind of moving on from Clayface, if that's okay. You're currently writing Dead Teenagers for Oni Press.
Yes. And
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Dead Teenagers is a little bit different than most things I've done. It's a slasher comedy. And it is about 5 teenagers who have been stuck in a time loop in prom in 1997 for seemingly eternity, for about 11,000 loops, which I think I worked out is about 30 years. And every time they go to prom and every time they die as the result of something new and horrible. But one day the loop breaks and they are unfortunately stuck as middle-aged adults in 2026.
That is a horror.
Yeah, it is. It's really like it's a dark fate, so they have to like adapt to being slow and old and living in the collapse of society, and still have people trying to kill them constantly.
That loop is looking better and better.
Exactly. Take me back to the loop. Put me in 1997 forever. I don't want to know what happened. But yeah, so that's gonna have its third issue out on May 20th.
Awesome.
Excellent. How's it been working with Oni? They've kind of been the one of the gems of the indie publishing world for 25 more years now, or
Yeah.
really closer to 30.
I know. No, Oni has like a really, really great back catalog. What got me there is that Sierra Hahn and Alison Gronowitz, who have been my editors ever since my very, very first project, they both wound up at Oni. And I love working with them. I trust them implicitly. Everything that they've ever made me do to a script has made it 10 times better. Every time I've ever said no to something they wanted me to do to a script, I would like wake up a month later and be like, that would have been better. But no, so Sierra Hahn is the new editor-in-chief. And I don't know if I should even say new at this point. She's been there a while. And Alison Gronowitz has been my editor on Dead Teenagers. And yeah, it's astonishing. I really, really have loved working there. And I've loved Boom too. I've been with Boom for a good long time.
How do you feel that you've grown as a writer? You know, when you started out with Ball up until what you're working on now, Clayface and Dead Teenagers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Ma was like, I still love the project in a lot of ways. It was definitely me feeling like they are only going to let me do this once. I'm going to throw fucking everything at it. And it feels like a comic that you threw everything at. It has parts that really work and it has parts that don't. But I think by the time I wrote my third comic, Be Not Afraid, I had actually settled into a state where I felt like I believe that I can do this. And I don't have to try to answer every question and put every obsession and like make every socially conscious statement I want to make inside every project. You know, like a lot of my work has been about gender. A lot of it has been explicitly queer. A lot of it has been like about patriarchy and patriarchal, you know, oppression and all of that. But when I sat down to write Be Not Afraid, it was just like, okay, this is about a woman who gave birth to a monster baby and she has to kill it, but the monster baby doesn't want to die. The end. You know?
Sounds very Lovecraftian influenced.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's like, you know, H.P. Lovecraft's We Need to Talk About Kevin in a lot of ways.
I love it.
But it's, you know, I developed a sense that the form could carry me and the form was very flexible, and that as long as I came at it from a perspective of visuals first, which is why I write panel by panel, because like I absolutely, as much as I love to talk, I don't want any dialogue in there that doesn't need to be there. So I just like, you know, literally just storyboard the thing out and then figure out how few words can I put on a panel. But it's, as long as I put the visuals first, as long as there is a strong image at the core of the story, I know I can do it. And that actually brought me to a place where I think the writing was a lot more assured and a lot more thoughtful, because I was no longer sitting down hoping to prove that I could write a comic. I was just like trying to write this one in front of me pretty well, you know? Is that like the most cocky, self-absorbed, narcissistic answer you've ever heard?
No.
Could I make it worse? Is there a way I could dial it up? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You could be an older British writer.
Ooh.
And like there's lots of room for smugness.
I'm not sure I want to go down that road.
I don't think you want to. You've been nothing but humble with us this whole time, Jude, and I just don't, I don't see that in your future.
So which comic writers do inspire you, or do you look to for? Not, I always stumble on this question. Not to, you know, duplicate but you know, kind of.
No, absolutely. I am just a big, huge James Tynion fan. I read tons of James Tynan's work. I also Junji Ito is somebody where like I can pick up a Junji Ito comic, and I just started reading. Let me get the title right. Dio, and like it starts off as like your worst nightmare about getting a cockroach stuck in your New York City apartment, and then it just gets worse and worse. It was so disgusting. I was just like bouncing up and down on the couch. but yeah, Junji Ito like actually deeply scares me. I love E.M. Carroll, who wrote When I Arrived at the Castle. They do like just a really nice, creepy folk horror. And contemporary writers, I'm lucky enough to like live in a time with lots of cool contemporary queer and trans writers. I love Zoe Tennell's work. I love Jadzia Axelrod's work. So yeah.
That reminds me, I need to get together my review of the Justice League Intergalactic.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
So,
For shame.
well, I read it and I thought, because they have the Pride Month coming up, the 4-issue. It's the Dreamer and Galaxy, I think, and
Yes.
I wanted to read it because Galaxy was one of those characters that I kind of missed, not reading, so I didn't know a lot about, and so.
Yeah, I feel like Galaxy has lived in her graphic novels.
Yeah. Up until
Don't
now,
quote me on this, even though it's live. Don't tell anyone I said it. But yeah, I think that she kind of has her own universe, but she's getting increasingly woven into the bigger DC.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I this is just an observation more than anything else, but between the big two companies, I feel like DC definitely projects a safer space for queer and transgender youth than Marvel does, and I wonder if you share that perspective, if it's anything that noticeable that you've seen, or am I just imagining things from the outside looking in?
Well, I mean, for me, I have, and this is again like no sauce to any of the other companies I've worked with.
Of course not. No.
Working with like the same two editors at Boom and Oni, basically. Well, not the same two. I've worked with several others. I've worked with Carolyn Butler quite a bit, but DC definitely has a ton of trans and queer editors, a ton of trans editors specifically, which was for me really a welcoming thing, because you always worry when you're putting something out there, like how much of this do I need to explain? How much of this do I need to tone down to get it past the gatekeeper? And there's actually been less of that at DC than in many, many other places that I've worked, both as a journalist and as a comic writer. So to me, I've gotten to work with Andrea Shea, and I've gotten to work with Ash Padilla and Ariana Totoro, and everybody there, just seeing the amount of work that goes into making sure that DC has the amount of trans character representation that it does, seeing the amount of work it takes to like shift things around in these giant IP things, and like all the meetings that have to be taken before you can put a character in a Pride anthology, for example, just be like out and out, like this, no, this one's gay. It's really heartening to me. And I think there's a reason that they have worked so hard to put so many queer and trans characters in there, like I think that's definitely very much on the agenda for everyone I've worked with there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that they've kind of stuck with it, because I mean, there was a big, I know this is going to surprise you that comic book fans can be, judgmental, but when Tim Drake, when that hit, people were like, but they've luckily they've stuck with it, and it's worked.
Yeah, no, like I think that like the Tim Drake thing is amazing. Nobody flinched at me being like, I absolutely both want to have Victoria October in the Clayface miniseries, and I also just want to have a page where I slag off Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage, which is this like fear-mongering book about youth transition, like, and I was able to do that. Nobody like told me like, no, just like this guy's gonna be in a movie. You have to make him relatable to normal people. He's not relatable to normal people. He's Clayface, but it was they don't seem to be afraid of having a diverse character roster. And I say that, and like at the same time, like I don't have anything, like I'm definitely not an established enough comicsman to have any grounds to slag off Marvel. Like they've got Gail Simone working on X-Men now, and X-Men has been like a giant gay metaphor and a trans metaphor and all the rest of it for like ages, So like my understanding, I spoke to like Vita Ayala, who's written quite a bit of New Mutants, and Ayala had like a really supportive experience at Marvel too. I think that there's just like the background, the number of editors who are themselves queer or trans is just like it's heavily diversifying. So it's getting safer to do this stuff, and I hope it will continue to be. Right? I hope that we're not on the verge of like a Target style pull it all off the shelves because somebody's going to yell at us backlash.
Right.
But so far, like nerd culture and queer culture have always kind of been like this. Like they've always had like such a close relationship that it seems to be one of those spaces that's staying relatively open, even in an increasingly culturally conservative time. I'm grateful for that.
Definitely.
Very cool. Because comics always, I mean, this is a decades-old reality, but comics always reflect the world around them.
Yes.
And for them to, if it were to happen that all of these trans and queer characters are suddenly back in the closet or off the shelf, that would fly in the face of reality.
Exactly.
And we don't want that.
Right.
We like our comics to reflect the world around us, despite the fact that there's obviously a very vocal minority that loves to pretend comics have never been political and or representative.
Right. And it's very hard to make any form of art that's not political because your form of art is going to be set in the world. What you say and what you don't say is, it's always going to reflect on the world around you. And as much as I'm like, I have strong opinions about things, I don't think that the stories I write are necessarily dogmatic just because they have trans people or queer people in them.
No.
I think that's just like, that's writing stories about human beings. And that's the joy of art, is that you get to read and watch and consume, media by people who aren't you. And thereby, you don't have to be just one person over the course of your life. You can have a million lives sitting in your living room. That's the beauty of it, that we're able to share who we are in that way.
Now, are there, just off the top of your head, are there any other characters like in the DC universe that you would like to kind of do the same thing that you're doing with Clayface, or we'll even let Marvel in on the?
Yeah. No, like just talking DC. I might get to write a Poison Ivy story. I love Poison Ivy so much. I love Poison Ivy too much. Like that would be amazing. I love the just sort of venomous feminist eco horror aspect, the like Avenger of the natural world, all of that. I love it and I need it. I don't think they would ever let me write Catwoman. I would write Catwoman though. I would sell potentially an arm, like not the good type in arm, but the less useful one to like Catwoman writing. And I don't know, like there are so many queer characters. I always want to write a villain. I love writing a villain. We got to I worked with Tim Sheridan on the DC Pride issue, and we worked with and it was mostly Alan Scott working out his like complicated past as a gay man in the Navy. And I was like, what about his dead boyfriend who's like brainwashed Soviet soldier, and he was just killed and revived over and over and over, and it made him evil. Because I like that guy. I'm gonna give that guy a speech. Like I always want to find the person who's, suffering, because I think suffering is one thing we all have in common, just to really elevate the tone here. And people who can be very honest about their suffering and about the extremes it drives them to are just like, to me, that's catharsis. That's why you read,
Yeah, most definitely. So we're down to our last 10 minutes or so. We like to do a top 5 with our guests. And Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we settled this week on top 5 non-A-list Batman villains.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess I'll start with my number 5. I mean, he's most of the time it's been played, as a joke, but Killer Moth. He was in the John Joshua Jackson. I messed up his name again, but he made him into kind of like a cool, guy who actually had a reason for doing what he was doing and had all the tech. But I think, he got kind of sillier during Underworld Unleashed when he got turned into an actual moth. But that's my number 5.
Okay. All right. Jude, how about you?
Okay, number 5. You'll tell me that he's not technically a Batman villain, to which I respond, he definitely did fight Catwoman. Snowflame, the anthropomorphic spirit of cocaine.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Both powered by cocaine and causes you to get high on the cocaine of his spirit when you're near him.
Oh, you dug deep for that one. I love.
Yeah.
Hats off.
I want Snowflame to become an ever more major fixture.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Jeff Lemire, are you listening? Make it happen. Okay, so my number 5 would probably be Firefly, just because he's so simple. He flaps around and sets things on fire. And I'm a big fan of less is more, right? And plus he had a role to play during Nightfall. So I got to give him props for that. Yeah.
I think he's my number 4 because he's kind of like, Killer Moth. He's usually played off as a joke, and just he's somebody for the side, one of the sidekicks, Robin, or somebody to knock her around and
punch in the head.
So
it's definitely
that's my number 4.
Okay, perfect. We were on the same page. Jude, who's your number 4?
Okay, my number 4 is the Actuary. He worked briefly for the Penguin. He was in one issue.
Yes.
And his superpower is the ability to calculate the odds of a crime paying off and being perfect. So I think I had one of my Clayface pitches featured the adversary or not the adversary, the Actuary as a major character. And I was like, I know this isn't going to work, but we could absolutely bring the Actuary in on a major level. And to this day, maybe that's my dream DC character, right? The Actuary one off. And it's going to be so dark, so disturbing, so much mass.
Okay. My number 4, and I love the story, and I'm drawing a blank on the character's name, but the voodoo guy that was responsible for the death of Tim Drake's mom.
Ooh.
I completely forget.
Papa Midnight?
No, it's not Papa Midnight. He's more associated with Constantine.
Okay.
And yeah,
but I know who you're talking about.
It was during the Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle run, and which definitely stands out in my mind.
My number 3 would be, it's from I think it was issue 50 of Batman or Shadow of the Bats. It was like Narcosa or something, and he could make you dream really weird stuff.
Yes, I read that recently.
Yeah, that seemed like a cool character that just kind of went off into,
Went off into Never Neverland.
yeah. So number
Okay.
3.
Number 3. Jude, number 3.
I'm going to go with Anarchy from the Tynan Batman run because I like that his power is just to lecture a lot and be really annoying.
He's a 12-year-old who read Marx once.
Yes.
I love Anarchy.
Yes.
There's something just so wholesomely skewed about that character.
I think there's also, kind of in the same. There's also kind of something skewed about the general, the little kid who's like Ulysses, and he's like commanding.
Yeah, the 10-year-old that tries to unite all of the gangs. The general, yes. Okay, my number 3 is. Oh God bless! I just went blank. Mr. Zaz. Yeah. Straightforward slasher, very much a 90s trope of a character, but just fun when he shows up. And also he's quickly running out of spaces on his body to put the little marks. So
that could be
that's when you get a sidekick. That's the sidekick's job.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, number 2. I don't know, Amygdala, the big guy who's like the first time I read it was during Nightfall, and he was one of the bad guys that put a big beating down on the Bruce Wayne or Batman as he was starting to go downhill, and he just very childlike, but can all of a sudden just turn into a raging monster.
Yeah. I also want to. I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe that character also originated from the Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle run. Don't quote me on that, but I think a lot of magic in that run. I wish DC would put together an omnibus.
We'll have to go to the fact checker after we're done.
Okay. Now, I did not get the instruction that they needed to be non-A-list characters, so I am improving here. The Joker briefly, like in DC, it is just sort of like a fact universally acknowledged that a comic series must be in need of a monkey. And the Joker briefly had a monkey that he was like training to be like the monkey Joker. He died. It didn't end.
Didn't go well.
Seems to be a theme with the Joker.
The monkey.
Okay, for me, number 2 is Cluemaster. He's a shameless rip-off of the Riddler, but he's got cash because he's Spoiler's dad. And he'll always have that angle going for him.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2. Chad, what's your number 1 Batman villain?
I don't know if he's a C, but he's he's occasionally used, and Hugo Strange. I mean, there's so much you could do with Hugo Strange, because he can kind of flies under the radar, but he's they're manipulating, he can manipulate Batman or Bruce Wayne and all that without having to do the big grandiose plans.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, Jude, what do you got?
I'm gonna pull from the Batman the Animated Series. I like Roland Daggett a lot. He's like a creepy, sleazy corporate executive who ruins lives and is baffled that anyone would have a problem with that. I think, like there's been a lot of those guys in Batman cinematic and comic history, but I like his particular spin on it. I like that he sounds like Mary Tyler Moore's boss while he's doing it.
Your pitch could be that he runs for president.
Yes.
Yes. Beautiful, Chad. All right, my number one is Rupert Thorne,
Ooh.
Boss Thorne. And the reason I picked Boss Thorne is there was a brief window there in the 70s during the Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers run on Detective Comics where Boss Thorne was like the template for what Marvel's Kingpin would become. He was just this omnipresent crime lord, and Batman could never put him away. And he was just like this major figure. And then the 70s end, and the guy just goes away. And he'll occasionally show up. Like I know he was on Batman the Animated Series here and there, but he's never become the A-lister that he had the potential to be. And or I should say that he was treated as briefly there in the 70s. And to me, that missed opportunity kind of summarizes perfectly the essence of being a B-list Batman villain or any villain. Is missed opportunity. So, Yep, that's me.
What was the was the show Shaman Obadiah man? Obadiah? I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
The
voodoo guy.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Even though I had to make up that entire list, I had a written list written down, and the actuary was still on it.
Nice.
Still very high.
The Obia man.
Huh?
The Obia man.
That's
O-B-A-H. Yep, you got it. You were actually there. You were tiptoeing among the tulips of the name.
I think it would also be fun to see more about the Three Stooges that worked with Bane.
Yeah. Was Zombie, Bird, and Trog? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Most definitely.
Like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, but for Bane.
Well, Jude, I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, but like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, but for like working for Bane. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, Jude Ellison S. Doyle, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. And Chad and I were lucky enough to get to read an advanced copy of Clayface, which, correct me if I'm wrong, comes out in July.
July 8th. That's what they tell me.
July 8th. Okay. Get out there, support this comic, support comics that are not mainstream and dare I say B-list. Keeping with our theme.
B and like all the letters below it.
Yes.
That's where I live, you know.
Yes. Listen, in that vein, Cheetah and Cheshire robbed the Justice League. Masterclass in storytelling. Thank you, Greg Rucka and Nicola Scott. But anyway, it's a great comic, and you will not be disappointed when you pick it up. So, Chad, who do we have next week?
Good question.
Okay.
To be determined.
Continued. Okay. Well, for all of you out there listening, thank you for supporting us. You can always check us out at comic-watch.com. Get out there, do some good in the world, support local everything. Your local comic book store, local bookstores, local music, etc., etc. Just do some good in the world. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.